Welcome in to Seahawks Today, powered by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. Happy to have you with us. On today's show, we are talking first-round draft targets for your Seattle Seahawks as their season is officially over after the loss to the San Francisco 49ers in the wild card round. The offseason officially begins today. We'll tell you some options for Seattle for their 2 first-round picks. We'll get to all that and more in just a second. But I got to tell you, you need to be subscribed to the channel because this is your NFL Draft headquarters. We are going to cover this team like no one else is throughout this entire offseason with daily news and rumors segments. We'll cover the free agent market as well as trades. And, of course, the NFL Draft. We will tell you everything you need to know. Got mock drafts coming on the way as well. Subscribe now if you love the Seahawks and want more draft content. This is the place to be. The 2023 Draft, it will be here before you know it. And Seahawk fans, I know that this past season was supposed to be a rebuilding year of some sorts, but here the Seahawks are. They find themselves with a really good foundation set. Although the season ended early in the postseason, there's a lot to be proud of and to get excited about as far as the direction of this franchise goes. The Seahawks have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds, and if the draft were held today, let's tell you what those picks would be. The number 5 pick they would hold from the Denver Broncos, that's locked in, that's in place no matter what. As the Broncos season is officially over, expect Seattle to stay put there with that number 5 pick. More on that in just a bit. Then there's the number 20 pick that the Seahawks have. That's their own pick, but that could still be changed depending on the outcome of how the Dallas-Tampa Bay game goes. If Tampa Bay beats Dallas tomorrow, then that pick will get moved, and Seattle will end up having 4 of the top 51 picks in the draft, as they'll also have the pick at 37 in the second round, and then right now they're at 52, but again, they can also move up. So if you're looking for somebody to root for on Monday Night Football, be rooting for the Dallas Cowboys. As painful as that may be to say, it would help the Seahawks when it comes to their draft stock of moving up potentially if Dallas were to beat Tampa Bay. So before I reveal my draft targets of who I'm looking at for the Seattle Seahawks here in 2023. Who do you think the Seahawks should draft? This is your chance to weigh in. This is our pinned comment today. You like an ad break. If so, take advantage of it and tell me who you think they should draft, whether it's in the first round, second round, third round. Maybe it's a couple guys that come to mind. Give me some names in particular that you would love to see be members of the Seattle Seahawks next season. Let me know in the comments section below. So let's begin looking at the top targets for the number 5 pick. And I'm going to bring up 5 guys, and maybe they're not all going to be available at 5, but at least one of them should be in theory, right? You begin with Will Anderson, who's my favorite player in this draft, the edge rusher out of Alabama. More on him in just a second, but to me, this is a guy that I would take before even any quarterback, depending on what your need is at quarterback. I think he's that good that I would take him before the others. Jalen Carter would certainly help the Seahawks at the defensive tackle spot. We talked a lot this season about how much the Seahawks struggled with the run game, and Jalen Carter immediately would become a great inside presence for that Seahawks team. If you want to see the tape on Jalen Carter, I encourage you, just go back and watch a little bit of that national championship against TCU, how painful that game may have been for TCU fans. Jalen Carter was just unstoppable in that game. And then there's Bryce Young, the quarterback out of Alabama, and I'll have more on him in just a second. Bryce Young is something special. He really is. He might be a little undersized for his position, but he has everything else you can want. Got the moxie, got the intangibles. He's won some big-time games. You just think about last year with that Alabama team, and as good as they were on paper, they still were only in contention for certain games because of what Bryce Young was able to bring to the table, of what he was able to do to keep his team in said games. Then there's C.J. Stroud, the number 2 quarterback on most boards out of Ohio State. But there starts to become some questions that have popped up in the last few days that he actually might head back to Ohio State, which would just be crazy considering that he's well on his way to being a top 10 pick, it would seem. But another outstanding quarterback that has all the measurables that things stack up there. And then there's Myles Murphy, the edge rusher out of Clemson. And I got to tell you, this is a guy that has a lot of potential, that has everything that you could want out of an edge rusher. If you're Seattle and you land one of these 5, you are thrilled, to be honest, if one of those guys are still there. Now, here's the deal. If it's Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud, for that matter, if you're drafting a quarterback, I think no matter what, they are sitting behind Geno Smith next year. Geno has earned that right, having a Pro Bowl season, being the most accurate quarterback in franchise history. We all know he is a little bit older, so there's, the questions about longevity for Geno Smith. So you don't have to rush this decision to bring in said quarterback. But if you are going to get a guy like Bryce Young, somebody that you can't pass the opportunity of if he's still available, here's what he brings to the table. This is a guy that won the Heisman Trophy, was a consensus All-American last year. Mel Kiper has him number 4 overall on his big board. And so with that being said, if the teams are listening to Mel Kiper, maybe there's a chance that he doesn't go 1 or 2 potentially, that he could slip and be available at 5. If he's there at 5, watch out. I think you bring him in, and then he sits behind Geno Smith for this next year. Here's what Kiper had to say about Bryce Young. An incredibly quick release. He's accurate, and he's also an anticipatory thrower who knows how to hit receivers where they need the ball to run after the catch. He doesn't make many mistakes. He's one of the best processors I've scouted over the past decade, meaning he could go through read progressions and find his target or knows exactly the right time to escape the pocket. So a lot of praise there from Mel Kiper on Bryce Young. I like Bryce Young a lot. I think Seattle would be happy to get him if he is still available at 5. If you had to choose between one of the 2 top quarterbacks, C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young, who are you going with? We're not factoring Will Levis here. Will Levis does not belong in their conversation with these guys. But nonetheless, if you had to choose between one of these 2, who would it be? Let me know in the comment section. Type CJ for C.J. Stroud. Type BY for Bryce Young, and let me know in the comment section below. Now let's look at the top targets at the number 20 pick for Seattle. Tyree Wilson. I know we typically don't talk about pass rushers out of Texas Tech, but Tyree Wilson would be the exception in this case. A behemoth of a football player, made a huge difference on this Texas Tech team. Watch out and see if he's still available at that number 20 spot. Then there is Brian Bryce, the defensive tackle out of Clemson. I know we talked about Myles Murphy earlier, but Brian Bryce is very intriguing at the defensive tackle spot, potentially of what he could bring to the table at that pick if he is still around. The best tight end in this draft is Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame. And although Brock Bowser out of Georgia was the best tight end in the country this past year, the last 2 seasons for that matter, he's not draft eligible. But Michael Mayer is built very well, has good hands, he can block. He is a full force at the tight end spot. And Seattle had some inconsistency. Although they had some moments with Noah Fant and Colby Parkinson and Will Dissly this year, they never found that true number 1 tight end. Michael Mayer potentially could be that guy. We head to Southern California. That's where we find Jordan Addison, a wide receiver from USC. And I know what you're thinking. Wait, you already have DK Metcalf and you have Tyler Lockett too. Well, you didn't have a number 3 receiver established. And Tyler Lockett is getting older. You have to start thinking about the next guy who's going to step up in that wide receiving core. If Jordan Addison's still available at 20, he certainly would be tempting for that spot. And then last on our list of potential options at 20, this one might catch some folks off guard, but it's a fascinating pick potentially. Andre Carter, the second outside linebacker out of Army, really good football player, has a ton of discipline, great athleticism, and they figured out everything where he's not going to have to immediately go into service. He will be able to play right away in the National Football League. So that's a positive for him on that front. So I think when Seattle comes to trades and everything, the number 20 pick is more likely to be traded than the number 5. I think if you're the Seahawks, you're just grateful you have that pick at 5 from Denver, that you'll probably stay there. The 21 for me is the one that could go up or down, that I guess you would say is more vulnerable. The guy that in particular that I look at, Brian Bryce, potentially with that number 20 pick, he was a first-team All-ACCer back in 2020. But the reason why that he would be available at that 20 spot, as opposed to when you look at the talent level-wise, he looks like a top 5 or top 10 player, is the injuries that he's dealt with. In 2021 and in 2022, he did not play a whole lot of football in either one of those seasons. And so that's a question you have to ask yourself about Bryce. Is he worth the risk, considering already young in his career, he's had the injury history? He's the number 12 player on Mel Kiper's big board at this point in time. Here's what Kiper had to say about Bryce. Bryce, a 5-star recruit in the class of 2020, tore his left ACL in September 2021 and played in just 4 games, but I was impressed with his tape. He locates the ball well and explodes into the backfield at the snap to disrupt throwing lanes and find ball carriers. He's aggressive and hustles on every snap. He could be a major force inside at the next level. Bryce has 2.5 sacks this season. So there you have it. That's a look at some of the potential draft targets. We got plenty of more draft coverage coming up over the next couple of months here on the channel as we count you down to the 2023 NFL Draft. Before we go, want to know, what is the biggest need for Seattle in this upcoming draft? What did they need to address right away? What comes to mind for me is the interior of the offensive line, the defensive line, the linebacker positions, those right away. What comes to mind for me? What say you? Let me know in the comments section below what you think the Seahawks should target in this upcoming draft. As always, you can interact with me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, talking about your Seattle Seahawks on those social media channels. And I'll see you next time right here on Seahawks Today.